Y'all, I'm gonna check out this video that y'all sent me about the Somalis having breakdowns.
What many Americans can find an offense more retarded. Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with it. Absolutely, sure. You have a problem with it? You know what? I think there's something wrong with it. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into the state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country. It's got a name, but it doesn't function like a country. Yeah, there's something wrong with Walz.
Amigo, não tem problema. Amigo, não tem problema, amigo. Hold on, me, man. Back.
Show us up on your feet. Nigga, walk like a grown person, man. Get your ass up. Doing all this fall.
You're gonna get knocked down. Move.
أنا معهم لأن دبي أنت اللي وضو باسبوركي ولا قاتي وعلي سوق جرا.
Yo, this nigga crying on TikTok, bro. This nigga crying on TikTok.
تقفوا embassy لصار لكورو إلاك بغض لسؤال عند علي. I don't want to be here no more. I'm so tired of being here. This place. This is where I'm living. I'm so tired of it. It's just like I want to go back. I don't want to be here no more. I don't cut my hair. I don't shave. I don't do nothing. I just want to go back. It just gets bad here, man. I just don't want to be here no more. Just pray to God just. I'm just tired of you guys talking about me and just always talking shit.
So you get on the internet more? So you get your ass on TikTok, you don't put the phone down? Is this person mad because they deported him? Nigga, you not from here. What do you think you could just pull up and just like Debo? Is this your country now? Like
These guys just don't even know how to just leave me alone. I'm just so tired.
Boy. So we got to talk about Tim Walz, okay? Tim Sugar Walz, who was confronted on NBC News about President Trump's comments towards him, right? President Trump said some mean words about Tim Sugar Walz, and we got to talk about it because Tim Sugar Walz is facing a whole lot of questions to why is it that he is overseeing one of the largest fraud schemes that we've ever seen in this country, coming from the Somali community that currently has taken over the liberal city of Minneapolis.
A massive fraud scheme uncovered in Minnesota found money intended for social services has been allegedly siphoned indirectly into the pockets of the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Somali immigrants in Minnesota have reportedly been abusing systems meant to help the most unfortunate among us, including the latest federally funded autism services. The autism fraud scheme reportedly amassed $14 million through Medicare claims for services that were never provided, involving kids who never had autism. And the Somali immigrants behind this web of schemes have allegedly stolen billions from taxpayers, much of the money going back to the Somali government, where it would then end up in the hands of terrorists. Manhattan Institute investigative reporter Ryan Thorpe was one of the first exposing the schemes for their ties to terrorism. With us now, Ryan, a line from your story stuck out. The largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer, and you cite an unnamed source for that. What is the evidence that all of this money that was taken and the billions upon billions of increased funding in Minnesota for social services ended up in Somalia?
Well, billions of dollars of government welfare money is missing in the state of Minnesota.
How do we define missing?
Well, the fraud is so bad that the U.S. Attorney's Office has come out and indicated that they believe their entire government programs, where the fraudulent claims outstrip the legitimate ones. There are cases where indictments have come down or guilty pleas are already in to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars that were fraudulent.
He said, why are you crying? Aren't these the same Somali people screaming, dead to America?
Obtained, filing false claims alongside doctored paperwork. And the indictments are continuing to come. And the U.S. Attorney's Office has made very clear that this is a network of fraud schemes stacked upon fraud schemes, and that while the true dollar figure in terms of stolen funds at this point isn't quite clear, it's safe to say that we're talking about billions of dollars.
Okay. It's pretty wild, some of the things that you lay out, including one group called Feeding the Future that went from getting $3.4 million in 2019 to $200 million 2 years later. They grew faster than NVIDIA. How did nobody see that? Or is it that people and the government and those who are supposed to be the watchdogs, like Tim Walz, like Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, there just weren't looking?
I think it's safe to say that there was a real unwillingness or inability among Democratic state officials in Minnesota to recognize some pretty obvious alarm bells here. All across these programs, claims were skyrocketing, absolutely spiraling out of control over a short period of time. And the reality is that the Somali community, which is where these large-scale fraud rings have been concentrated within this population in the state, it is a sizable voting bloc. It is a voting bloc you have to win if you're going to win political office in Minneapolis. And so I think that was likely a incentive here that
they saying they was letting them do that stuff because they was trying to get votes. That would be wild.
Made some people not want to look too closely at what's been going on.
Yeah, they don't want to look too closely at it, as this guy lays out, because it's obvious that a lot of Democrats are probably being funded by the fraud, right? Because that is how Democrats operate. What they do is that they take taxpayer dollars, they funnel the taxpayer dollars into these liberal nonprofits, these entities that are designed to do good, right? To do humanitarian stuff. Like, for example, help kids with autism or take care of old people or whatever. But that's not what they actually do. They funnel that money into their own pockets. They don't actually solve the problem that they're supposed to solve. And then they give Democrats kickbacks in the form of campaign donations for funneling tax dollars to them. There's no doubt in my mind that that's probably what's happening in Minneapolis. It's probably what's happening in Minnesota. And that's why you have politicians like, for example, Tim Walz playing the race card when confronted on all of the fraud that seems to be very prevalent amongst the Somali community in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and roll this clip of Tim Walz responding to NBC News host Kristen Welker, confront him on the scandals that are happening in his state that he's overseeing. And why is it that
they're not going to have no answers? Probably going to be stumbling their ass off trying to, because that's insane. All the stuff that I'm hearing is, that's wild. There's no excuse for this.
He's not doing anything about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
From countries beyond Afghanistan, specifically targeting the Somali community in your home state. He also... Welcome back, and joining me now is Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. Governor Walz, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you, Kristen. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Thanks you so much for being here. I do want to start with the tragic shooting of the two National Guard service members. In the aftermath of the shooting, as you know, President Trump has responded by vowing to crack down on refugees, including from countries beyond Afghanistan, specifically targeting the Somali community in your home state. He also described you using a slur widely regarded as derogatory toward people with intellectual disabilities. I want to read for you what he said, Governor, and get your reaction on the other side. He said, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope they'll be left alone. The seriously blank governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing either through fear, incompetence, or both. What is your response to President Trump, Governor?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me express my condolences to the families of the National Guardsmen. They're out there doing their duty. They serve us. As a commander-in-chief of the National Guard and someone who served, we have a responsibility to put them in a position where they're protected and they have a clear mission. And so I would express my condolences there. Look, Donald Trump insulting me is a badge of honor for me, but I think we all know, both as a educator for a couple decades and as a parent, using that term is just so damaging. It's hurtful. We have fought 3 decades to get this out of our schools. Kids know better than to use it. But look, this is what Donald Trump has done.
Yeah. This is what Trump has done. But yet, Tim Walz is the same person that said that, hey, no, we actually have to normalize this type of language. We have to normalize how we insult our political opponents on the campaign trail. This is what he said about President Trump.
But look, this is what Donald Trump has done. He's normalized this type of hateful behavior and this type of language. Well,
that's that Trump derangement syndrome working right there in full effect. Everything is blame Trump. Trump is for, and mind you, I didn't even vote. So, like, once again, I know there's going to be people crying when I say that. Once again, I'm not like the super diehard Trump stan. You know what I mean? But damn it, I don't think everything in the world is his fault. That's crazy.
Maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. When it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the shit out of him back. What we should demonize is people like Elon Musk.
Although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime. Just so you know, there will be news.
Yeah. So it's amazing to me how the guy who said that you have to bully the shit out of President Trump, and also on top of that, basically said that one day there will be news, okay, in the wake of the assassination attempt against President Trump, or this idea that, President Trump
I need to, excuse me real quick. I had to play this. That was disgusting.
Yeah. You nasty fam, you nasty. You nasty fam, you nasty. You nasty fam, you nasty. You nasty fam, yeah. You know your name. You
nasty as hell.
Is going to pass away. This guy is now boo-hoo-whining and crying about language, right? It is amazing how that works, okay? Bullying the shit out of President Trump is great. It's awesome, according to Tim Walz, but calling Tim Walz what the liberal media claims is a slur, out of bounds, right? Totally out of bounds. Fascinating.
He's normalized this type of hateful behavior and this type of language. And mainly, look, at first, I think it's just because he's not a good human being. But secondly, to distract from his incompetency. We know we just came through a Thanksgiving where prices are up. We know people are concerned about heating their homes as we're experiencing.
Nigga, you using Trump as a distraction. Like, what?
Blizzards out here at the same time he's cutting those programs. So, look, we cannot allow this to be normalized. The people who Trump is, like, this is language police. You guys are woke. Many times it's just about being decent to people and making them feel included. You can use that word. Sure, you can use that language, but you shouldn't. And that's something that Donald Trump fails to realize. But again, Kristen, this is cruelness. This is meanness. It's aimed at a broader community. And as far as demonizing our Somali community, maybe he could help us on some things. Demonizing an entire community, folks who are in the professions, educators, artists, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs. They bring the diversity and the energy to a place like Minnesota. And for him to just randomly decide to do this, it makes no sense. Do your job. Get the criminals out. Secure our border. but do it with dignity and respect to the American tradition of respecting immigrants and refugees as a beacon of hope.
Well, with all due respect, Governor, you are the governor of Minnesota, right? Isn't it your job to enforce the law in your state? If you have a ton of Somalis, I mean, we're talking about dozens of indictments, right? Of charges against Somalis for fraud. We're talking about welfare fraud. We're talking about funneling in excess of $1 billion to Somalia, to Al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization. Isn't it actually your job to police this, right? Isn't it your job, first and foremost? You're the first line of law enforcement against what is happening in your state. Again, it's amazing how these people try to blame Trump, or they try to pass off their job and what they're supposed to be doing to President Trump, right? It's almost as if Tim Walz doesn't want to police the Somalis, which he probably doesn't, to be honest with you.
Well, speaking of the Somali community, President Trump is targeting them and your state in part. He's citing fraud as the reason for his crackdown. Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money from government programs during COVID. As you know, Governor, that is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. So I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy. And as you heard Senator Kelly say, this president has cut a lot of inspector generals. He's cut programs that could help us tackle this on. So we'll take it on. We'll put folks in jail. I don't care what your nationality is. I don't care what your religion is, your color. If you're committing crimes, these are programs that were meant to serve students with autism, to housing, and to making sure people had enough to eat. There's a reason Minnesota ranks as the top, lowest childhood poverty, best place for children to live. People are taking advantage of that. They're going to prison. That is totally disconnected with demonizing an entire group of people who came here fleeing civil war and created a vibrant community that makes Minnesota and this country better. But that's Donald Trump. Deflect, demonize, come up with no solutions. He's not going to help fix anything on fraud. My God, there's a big difference between fraud and corruption is something he knows about.
Well, I don't know, man. I feel like when you are taking taxpayer dollars and you're funneling those taxpayer dollars into your own pocket, right? And you're not using it for what you're supposed to be using it for. Not only is that corruption, but it's also fraud, right? When you're taking taxpayer dollars and you're funneling those welfare dollars to Somalia, and it is ending up in the hands of terrorists, okay, Al-Shabaab and others. I feel like not only
that's the fraud right there. And that should be the focus, not Trump.
Is that corruption, but that's also fraud, right? I mean, I think that fraud and corruption go hand in hand here. I'm not sure exactly what argument Tim Walz is making, but ultimately today, President Trump is doing something about it, right? He is calling for the deportation of these Somalis. That Tim Walz is claiming that, hey, you're not supposed to demonize a whole group of people. I mean, I don't think anybody's demonizing a whole group of people, but we're simply pointing out the fact that, hey, this particular group of people in Minneapolis, Minnesota, they got a lot of power, right? They got a lot of power. Not only do they got a lot of power, but they're receiving a lot of welfare, a lot of taxpayer dollars, and they're funneling those taxpayer dollars into places that the taxpayer dollars shouldn't go. And clearly, they feel comfortable doing this at a large scale under your leadership.
That is insane. That need to be nipped in the bud immediately. I don't feel bad for nobody. I don't care. They're crying doing TikTok videos. Get up out of here with that.
And you haven't done enough to crack down on this, because if you were cracking down on it, then this wouldn't be happening. The federal government is now stepping in to crack down, and that is what President Trump is doing about it. So President Trump is not only talking the talk, he's walking the walk. If you were walking the walk, okay, if you were actually proactive about this wouldn't be happening in the first place. But because you're not proactive, because you're not doing your damn job, because let's be honest, I mean, the state is presenting cases that are getting overturned by judges, right? Based on the fact that, I don't know, maybe the state is not doing their due diligence and doing what they need to do in order to actually prove that a lot of these individuals who are obviously committing fraud are committing fraud. I think that you need to be doing more, right? Like there's a lot to be desired from what Democrats are doing in order to crack down on the fraud, okay? And just pointing the finger at Trump and boohoo, whine, and crying racism, hate, and bigotry, that's not going to solve the problem. At the end of the day, this is happening under your watch as governor. How in the world do you allow a specific community from a third world country to funnel billions of dollars in taxpayer money to terrorists? How do you allow that, right? How do you allow an operation of that magnitude to get to the level that is at without stopping it? This is happening under your watch, and you have to take responsibility for it.
By hyper focusing on Trump, blaming him for everything.
Well, you have the New York Times of all newspapers. I mean, you're talking about an ultra liberal newspaper calling out Tim Walz by name, right? Title: How Fraud Swamped Minnesota's Social Services System on Tim Walz's Watch. Prosecutors say members of the Somali diaspora, a group with growing political power, were largely responsible. President Trump has drawn national attention to the scandal amid his crackdown on immigration. Yeah. So when you have the New York Times, okay, with damning quotes in the article, like, for example, quote, no one was doing anything about the red flags. He said it was like someone was stealing money from the cookie jar and they kept refilling it. Yeah, that's a big problem. And then you have the Minnesota Department of Human Service employees saying Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud. But no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systemically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz, certain DFL members, and indifferent mainstream level media. It's scary, isolating, and left us wondering who can we turn to. In addition to retaliating against whistleblowers, Tim Walz disempowered the Office of the Legislative Auditor, allowing agencies to disregard their audit findings and guidance. Media and politicians supporting Tim Walz or the DFL agenda attack whistleblowers who were trying to raise red flags on fraudulent activities. This is a cascade of systemic failures leading up to Tim Walz. Agency leaders appointed by Tim Walz willfully disregarded rules and laws to keep fraud reports quiet, even to the extent of threatening families of whistleblowers. Wow. These same leaders are not qualified for their jobs, instead getting leadership jobs via Tim Walz's friendship, so state government were left floundering. DFL lawmakers refused to acknowledge fraud and deflected any serious conversation to stop fraud. Wow. Biased mainstream media such as WCCO and NPR showed absolutely no interest in covering fraud happening in our own state. Programs, especially in behavioral health and disability services, were built without any guardrails against fraud, all in an attempt to extract more funding from legislator and the federal government. Yeah, I mean, it's the flywheel of fraud. Okay, you have the federal government funneling money to the state of Minnesota. The Democrats in the state of Minnesota that are running that state funnel money to these liberal nonprofits, these entities that are run by Somalis that are supposed to be helping out autism patients, supposed to be helping out the elderly. They don't actually do that. They funnel the money into their own pockets and they give kickbacks to the liberal politicians, the Democrat politicians that funneled them the taxpayer dollars in the first place. That's how it works. As staff, we firsthand witnessed and observed fraud happening, yet we were shut down, reassigned, and told to keep quiet. Sometimes more leadership did not want to appear to discriminate against certain communities and were unwilling to take action such as stopping fraud that would have an adverse impact on their image. To date, no single agency has been held responsible for their role in fraud, whether it's Shireen Gandhi, Jess Jill, Jody Harpstead, Natasha Mertz, Eric Grumdon, or others. It is a structure created and maintained by Tim Walz, who has created an environment of interrelated agencies and institutions, including the media, that help foster through retaliation and turning a blind eye in exchange for political gain in the form of high power agency leadership jobs and other perks. Yeah. So again, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. Not at all. But once again, what we have here is Democrats refusing to take responsibility and accountability for what happens in their states. And then they demonize President Trump. They go after President Trump for doing their job, right? For doing the things that Democrats should be doing. Okay?
And then blaming him for mistakes that they made with Trump derangement syndrome. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Nasty as hell. Trying to like divert everyone's attention on Trump while they're doing foul stuff over there. It's crazy. Tell me what your opinion is down in the comment section. Hit the like button. Share the video as well. Trump wasn't around. I wonder who they're going to blame when Biden was in office for 4 years, falling asleep and whatnot, right? Everything was blaming Trump for all of the 4 years. Facts.